Hey everybody, Ryan here with Ray's latest, and today we're going to talk about Ryan Pepio being added to the IL to start this season, which sets back our rotation. But in contrary to that, we will see a Joe Boyle sighting in the starting rotation to start the season. So that is something to kind of keep an eye out on and kind of be a little excited about because I know a lot of you have been extremely upside with Boyle, and hopefully. Pepio being on the IL to start the season, with Boyle kind of stepping in. If he can fill that role pretty well, and per se say Nick Martinez does not change how he's currently been pitching, we can see Joe Boyle kind of fit into this rotation and kind of see how he goes with that. Also, I want to talk about Jake Woodford being traded as well to the Milwaukee Brewers, but we will get there later on in this episode. First, just going to talk about Ryan Pepio starting the season on the IL. Obviously, he it's a bummer. He was going to be our fourth starter. It was going to be Rasmussen, Matz, Martinez, Pepio, McClanahan to kind of round out that starting rotation. And him kind of going on IL to kind of start the season. Obviously, not ideal, was not something that any of us were really kind of looking for and kind of looking at. But now you have Walls, Lux, and Pepio starting the season on the IL, which is definitely not a good look for the Rays because our starting shortstop, our starting second baseman, one of our rotation pieces are starting the season on the IL. It is a little upsetting, and it's not something that a lot of us were kind of looking at being a possibility. And it is said to be hip inflammation. So we'll kind of see how that transpires over the next coming weeks. Obviously, inflammation isn't something that's necessarily too crazy to be kind of poking your eyes at and kind of being too keen on, like looking into per se is what I'm trying to say is inflammation is something that's not going to I would say kind of transpire over a couple of weeks. I think that's something that kind of gets taken care of within a week to 2 weeks, and I think that just him being on the IL to start the season is more of a precautionary measure, in my opinion. So we'll see how that kind of keeps going on, but I do think it will be a short stint on the IL. I think it will be a 15-dayer where he misses a couple starts and then kind of fits back into that rotation from there. But I do think from what I've seen from him this spring, obviously I think he might have had the best spring out of all of our pitchers. I mean, arguably Matt's had a great spring as well, but he is coming into the season on that innings restriction, on that pitch count. So we'll see how he does with that. But I think other from pitching perspective wise of guys that were just completely let loose, free to go, free to do whatever they want. I think Pepio looked fantastic, and the starts that he had made over the spring looked great. And I think him starting the season in the IL is definitely going to be kind of a digression of the rotation going into spring, obviously. But in contrary to that, Joe Boyle is getting put into the mix here, where we've kind of been looking at him as one of those guys that a lot of you guys have said I want Joe Boyle to be in the rotation. Like, I don't know why we're going out and signing all of these guys. I don't know why we're signing Martinez. I don't know why we're signing Matz. I think Joe Boyle's the answer to our problems. And now we're gonna see him fresh off opening weekend in the rotation. And I think obviously it's not something that we were expecting, and it's not something that we are excited about necessarily just because this Pepio that's getting hurt. And I would say if Martinez was the one starting the season in the IL, a lot of you guys would probably be like, "Whew, this is fantastic. This is good for us." But arguably, this being our second best starter, I would say it's not the best circumstance for that to happen. But I am excited to see Joe Boyle. And I think that if he can kind of continue doing what he's been doing and just kind of fully transition everything from the spring into the regular season, I think he'll be just fine. And I think he is MLB ready, in my opinion. And I think just primarily speaking, I don't think that he was going to be in the rotation, obviously, because there's just not a fit for him in there. I mean, you give Nick Martinez $7 million, you give Matt $7 million, you give McClanahan, who's your franchise cornerstone, Rasmussen and Pepio. You don't have a spot for him unless you make it a six-man rotation, which no team's really doing that these days. So I think that there just wasn't a spot open for him. But now there is, and we will see him kind of fit into that rotation and see how he does. And I think that at the end of the day, I think he's going to do great. And I am obviously I'm excited to see what he does. And I think that just seeing him in the big league setting, if he does great, just gives us another option in the rotation to be able to choose from. And I think that if you see a Slack or if you see McClanahan or Mats or Martinez go on some type of injured list or something like that, you have an option to kind of fill that void. And so I'm excited to see him to kind of just get into it and do what he can do. And I think that he's going to do great. And obviously, it's not the timing that we've expected for him, but I think that the times now, obviously, because he's in the rotation. And so I think that he's going to be able to showcase what he can do. And I hope that he can do the best that he can. And I'm excited to see what he can do and just transition over there. I hope Pepio gets back very soon so we can kind of see what he can do. Obviously, we know what he can do, but kind of see how he can transition everything from spring into the regular season and help the Rays as much as possible. But the next thing I talk about, Jake Woodford was traded today to the Milwaukee Brewers for a right-handed pitcher, Casey Hunt, and some a little bit of cash. Hunt was in Double A last season where he went 7-9 with a 4.45 ERA. Obviously, Woodford has had multiple years in the major league roster. He was sent to option to Triple A this season or this spring ahead of this trade, but he did have a upward mobility clause in his contract, which is pretty much one of those things where it's if he doesn't get added to our 40 man straight off the rip going into spring, going into the season, another club is going to have the option to do so. And if they do choose to do so, the Rays would have the option to match that where they would have to add them to their 40 man roster. But obviously, neither of that happened. And he was just straight up traded for Casey Hunt, which is a minor leaguer. Which this is a trade that was a little weird for me because at the end of the day, I do think that Woodford had a great spring, and I was really excited to see what he could do come this season. And I did think that he would make a big league debut at some point in the near future. But obviously, he was traded. Another trade yesterday as well was Cooper Bowman was traded to the A's for Gerlin Rosario, or Cooper Bowman is traded for the Rays from the A's for Gerlin Rosario, who was in high A last season in Bowling Green. So Cooper Bowman is coming into the Rays, kind of a deep outfield depth in Triple A last season, infielder, outfielder, kind of utility guy. I guess obviously with the Taylor Walls injury and the Gavin Lux injury, you want as much depth as possible. So this is one of those where you give up a high A guy for a triple A infielder, just to kind of see if there's a possibility that we might need him, that we do have something like that. And so I think that that trade's nothing really, not too meaningful, but we did get another infielder from the A's and Cooper Bowman. So we'll kind of see how that transpires over the next couple of weeks and months. And if he does, if Walls and Lux spend too much more time on the IL, we might see him up at some point. But at this point, I don't really see that happening. But who knows? It could happen. But you guys let me know what you guys think about this Pepio going in the IL and what this means for the rotation, as well as what you guys think about the Woodford trade. Because this is really intriguing to me because I did think he had a great spring, and I'm kind of surprised that the Rays decided not to kind of keep him around and see what he could do. But you guys let me know what you guys think about that, and you guys have a great one.